Talking about the second largest country in the world, and that's where things start to go out the window and you start to think, oh yeah, you know what, second largest country in the world, how on earth can you have a land bubble? Welcome to Canada. Nobody wants to come to Canada anymore, and especially highly skilled immigrants. And it's no wonder when you really think about it. Where I am right now, you know, you can expect to pay $700,000-800,000 for a single family home. And that's exactly what most people aspire to own, is a single family home. So when you're looking at a lot of these highly skilled and educated immigrants that we need here in Canada, they don't want to come here because guess what? They can go to a place like the United States, they can earn more money, and they can have a better house. They can also get better access to healthcare, and it's just going to be a better country for them with less taxes and more freedom, because essentially the Constitution in the United States, they're prepared to fight over that, whereas in Canada, essentially the government has walked over the Constitution over the past couple of years and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and nobody really cares. Nobody really does anything. I mean, we've all been out there protesting on these marches and they haven't solved anything, and I think largely a lot of people are asleep about what's going on in this country, and I think it's ultimately sad what's going on in this country. I mean, the fact is, if you import enough third world people, you're going to import third world problems, and that's just going to happen. Obviously, the more third world people that you have in your country, the more third world problems that you're going to get, and we see that right now across Canada, that crime is rising, and it's not just to do with immigration and people coming from third world countries. I don't want you to think that at all. There is a lot of problems with homelessness. There is a lot of problems with mental health. Mental health and homelessness problems are just continuing to increase as time goes on, and these things continue to just be a problem, and they're making the streets which we have in our downtown cores just not safe anymore. The random attacks that we see now are just crazy, and go back 2, 3, 4 years, you never used to see random attacks like this, and the mental health crisis that we're in is kind of not being widely accepted, I don't think. And I think a lot of it comes down to this housing bubble and the home ownership issues that we have in Canada. The fact that people have no aspirations, they feel like they've been completely let down, especially young people, because they're thinking, you know, what am I going to buy? I'm never going to be able to afford a home. I'm never going to be able to have any stability. I'm never going to be able to have a family. And that's how people feel, because I've heard from so many of you guys in the comments about what you feel like with the housing bubble and the housing market and how it's affected you. It's not just young people that are being affected. Obviously, you've got seniors that have been absolutely destroyed, and they could have tried to get away from this, go to places like Mexico, but they would have seen their purchasing power drop by about 50% because of weak currencies and inflation. So the seniors, they can't get away from it either, and in fact they're in a worse situation because their housing equity, which a lot of seniors actually rely on as their form of retirement, is at risk right now because the large amount of people don't want this housing bubble to continue, and the housing bubble is popping anyway on its own accord. Market forces are always much stronger than the government, and that's part of the reason why Toronto, I believe, was took off the UBS bubble index, is because the bubble has burst and it's continuing to burst. People just think that, oh, it's not on the UBS index anymore, that means that I can go out and buy, that means the housing market is now bottomed. But it's just the start. The US housing market took 6 years to bottom, from 2006 to 2012. Think about that, 6 years. Do you really think that people are anticipating that it's going to last that long here in Canada? And the fact is, it's going to last longer than that, in my opinion, because the housing bubble here is much larger than the one in the US, and the economy as well is much more dependent than the US economy was back in 2008 on the housing bubble. You see, we haven't got a lot of diversification in the economy here in Canada. Canada used to be a commodity driven powerhouse for the world, and it always was that ever since the founding landing of Canada and the beaver pelts and the Hudson's Bay Company. But essentially, as time has gone on, the government has realized, I think, that it's easy to just inflate these asset bubbles that you can then mask economic crisis like we had in 2008. And essentially these debt bubbles, they don't last. They're like a sugar rush, and they just don't last and they don't continue. And we're seeing that play out right now, because the housing bubble that has defied fundamentals for the past 10, 20 years essentially now is coming back down to reality. But how long it takes, it could take a long time. And because these things take so long, you have people buy and then you have those people lose their homes, all within the actual bubble going down. Because think about it, people are just constantly trying to fish for the bottom, and it's going to be the case just like in the stock market, in the housing market here in Canada. But you see, because of the leverage that has been on offer for the past 10, 20 years, we've seen people just taking on insane amounts of risk. They've been withdrawing from their home equity line of credit, going out and buying an investment property. You know, it's just insane. And you still see the insane amount of risk people are prepared to take here in Calgary, where half of apartments that are being sold right now are being sold to people out of province. The thing is, that is a clear sign that people are just completely insane right now when it comes to real estate. And I think this insanity kind of comes with the same sort of Chinese mentality that you now see in Canada as well when it comes to real estate. You see, in China, real estate has been seen as a place to park your savings that is safe. And as we can see in China, the real estate market is far from a stable market. It's not stable at all. The market is crashing. The biggest developers in China are going bust right now. And you can see that their bubble is in its demise phase as well. But you see here in Canada, it's exactly the same mentality, whereas real estate has been seen as a safe place to park your money and let your money grow, safer than the stock market with better returns too. And a lot of pensioners have done this. They fell into this trap where they thought, I'm going to park all my wealth in real estate. And guys, you know, just look at wealthy people. Just look at what wealthy people do. Real estate makes up a tiny fraction of their overall portfolio. Business investment is the highest percentage of their portfolio for wealthy people, followed by bonds and stocks. And then real estate is usually around 20 to 30% of their portfolio. Now that is vastly different when you compare it to an average person. An average person, real estate to them is 99% of their portfolio. It's 99% of their savings. People don't mind contributing all their money to it because they think over time it will just go up in value. Whilst that is mainly the case with real estate, that is when a market is coupled with fundamentals, is coupled with income growth. But here in Canada, it hasn't been coupled with income growth. It hasn't been coupled with fundamentals. I mean, you constantly hear the mainstream media talk about interest rates are up, interest rates are down, and they think now that the housing market is just gonna go whatever way interest rates go. They think that when interest rates come down, the housing market is just gonna be off to the moon, and the same with the stock market. But anyone that has studied history knows that that will in fact be the opposite of what happens, as is the case usually when the mainstream media is on about something. So it's kind of funny. You see these patterns play out all the time. You see hysteria in markets. You know, Canada's real estate bubble has been like the tulip mania in a way. I mean, people just think, oh yeah, this is going to be fine. I always put it into the context of land in Canada. Essentially, the bubble is really the land values. If you could get the land for free and then you were just paying for the house, it wouldn't be so bad. In fact, housing would still be affordable. But it's the land costs that have skyrocketed. Now you're talking about the second largest country in the world, and that's where things start to go out the window, and you start to think, oh yeah, you know what? Second largest country in the world. How on earth can you have a land bubble? Welcome to Canada. But that's exactly what's happened here in Canada, and especially in places where they've really tried to restrict building. And there are definitely places like that. It's not a place like Calgary that has restricted building though. I mean, Calgary has been building massive subdivisions for years and years and years. It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out over the coming years. I'm interested to see people's emotions when it comes comes to this housing market and how that kind of changes over time. The time when you really want to buy is when nobody else wants to buy and everybody's saying, hey, Canadian housing market is dead, and you can go into that market and get a deal as well. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this, you might like this video here, you might like this playlist here. If you want to help support this channel, go to patreon.com/marketmania. If you're looking for a VPN, go to expressvpn.com/marketmania. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.